So he is a very important official, an executive. And he can help bring a culture, specific culture, to Italy. A culture that I can sum up with a couple of words my father said. He was a psychologist. He set up a center for disabled children. And I started to learn when I was a kid. I learned how to do sports with these children. So that was normal for me. I did not know anything about diversity. And they told me at a certain point, well, do you play with the boys of the institute, of that institute? So President Pancalli represents equality in diversity and a whole lot of other things. Then we have Mr. Luciano Spalletti. I read his curriculum. He coached a lot. And currently he serves as head coach of the Italy national football team. And I have had the honor on the 18th of August of getting him to know him at his house, together with the Federation president, when we took to him the contract to be signed. So today we're talking about competing with esteem. How sport can give its contribution to peace. How it can lend a helping hand to the world. How it can answer questions. Going back to what the Pope said, I'm looking for the question here. I'm not very good at this. So, I would like to begin with President Pancalli, President of the Italian Paralympic Committee, and the question is about the issue of this very event. How can sport be an instrument of peace, of cohesion? Something that can knock down barriers. How can sport be an element of fraternity? Well, the question is interesting. How much time do I have? Because it calls for a very complex answer that brings about Catholic thought, but not only. It also extends to national politics. The national politics of countries concerning sports. I would start from an assumption, because even during the hearing with the Holy Father this morning, I noticed that what he said can really be food for thought and help us answer the questions we're asking ourselves this afternoon. First of all, the Holy Father pointed out a whole lot of suggestions and proposals that were included in his encyclical that goes back to October 2020 during the pandemic. And through this encyclical, the Holy Father, aside from focusing on the crucial issues of daily life, on the problems of present day, he addressed the issue of social distance, which also involves the spiritual element of man. And he also mentioned the physical distance, because that was a very particular moment. And he started off from the assumption that all men living in a single dimension, sharing the same fate, had to make these distances shorter. Indeed, social friendship was mentioned today, and this could help find a system for sharing, because together we are stronger in addressing and tackling and overcoming difficulties. Let us not forget what we were facing back then. So everything goes through the awareness that the grammar of humanity, as we said, must be somehow fostered, supported. So my question is this: can sport help us build a modern model of coexistence in order to foster that fraternity in a country? The answer is not only it can, it must as well. Sport must be organized, knowing that it is not just a matter of competition. Clearly, competition is part of sports, but it's much more than that. It is, above all, this is what I think, but a whole lot of other people think so, that sport, after family and schools, is a third pillar of society. And I've been working for many years in order to boost sport as a means of inclusion, not only for disabled people. It is a moment for sharing, and that's when we knock down barriers. That's when we can really remove barriers. Through a system of rules in sport, one can see himself in his rival, in his competitor. Competitor comes from the Latin word competere, which means also being with. So because that entails a whole lot of paths, training paths that in sport that can lead to this aspect of fraternity, because we are talking about human fraternity. Going back to the most ancient meaning of the term, fraternity is not just a matter of being part of the same family, being born from the same parents. Fraternity is a term whose origin comes from the Latin language, but it goes back to Sanskrit too, the very root of the world. And in the Sanskrit language, it means nurturing, it means support. So it creates interdependence between men in society, because you need your neighbor, you need someone else. That's part of human nurturing. So this is the very broad concept of fraternity. I believe that in a system and in the world of sport, in a national system, the world of sports can definitely facilitate all this. I don't want to sound trivial, but we talk a lot about inclusion and integration. In sport, we have children, boys and girls. We give them the true opportunity, starting from equal opportunity, the ability to prove their ability, the opportunity to prove their abilities. Then some perform better, but if you don't perform so well, you won't be lagging behind, you won't be left on your own. There are other ways to stimulate them, and that's what we do in the Paralympic world. In the Paralympic world, each one of us is a bearer of a difference, of a disability, and we teach our children to not to look at what we lost because of a pathology, a disease, or an accident. This can happen, but to look at what is still there. And through what is still there, we can reach our utmost expression as an athlete. And this can really reach out to civil society, because anyone who is in the world of sport is an icon. In this hall, we have celebrated the greatest successes of Italian sport ever since the Italian National Olympic Committee was founded. Today, there's something that perhaps is even more important. We celebrate the daily success of sport, something that thousands and thousands of sport clubs do on a daily basis. And this also involves a lot of work of volunteers. We celebrate what families do, because every boy and girl that is into sport is backed by their family. And I'm almost done because I'm a lawyer and I tend to speak a little too long. So the question is, can sport? The sport surely can, but in order to do it, it needs a political system that truly acknowledges that sport plays a paramount social and political role, because sport is part of the citizenship part of each one of us. Because when Balotelli was wearing the national shirt, the national jersey, well, he was truly a symbol. He symbolized a great identity, that something that could overcome ignorance and the limits of man. So from this standpoint, I believe that sport can and must, and we do it on a daily basis in sport, because aside from medals and successes, we think on a daily basis about our responsibilities. But all countries in the world must be aware that sport has this role. We often talk about its economic aspects, that especially goes for football. It's the sixth industry of the country. We point out its social functions too, but we forget to mention that it is a cultural phenomenon too. Sport can help people be more human, more fraternal, and more just. Good evening, welcome, good afternoon. I already had the honor of interviewing the president, so I'd like to move on to our head coach. We're talking about be human in these very days. This is the topic of the event. So I'm looking for some nuances in the human nature of our head coach. We know he is indeed a great coach, but we're trying to get to know him from a more human point of view. Within the sphere of this event, Fratelli tutti, just a couple of questions for Mr. Spalletti. A colleague of yours, Antonio Conti, says he hates wasting time talking about something that is not football. Does this go for you as well? Well, good evening. Good evening to you. And since you're asking questions in your fashion, in your way, I'll probably answer in my way. I'm sorry to comment on something. No, actually the question I was only asking if it goes for you as well. I have not studied a lot, so anything that can broaden my views and my knowledge is welcome. I'm very open to absorb them. So if you talk about something else for me that is not football, it is a pleasure for me. As a footballer, you played all over the pitch. You were not centre forward and you were not a goalkeeper. So give yourself a mark as a player and as a coach. I like to have people know that I've done everything, meaning that I have played in all football categories, at all levels. In terms of knowledge, it is very direct because I played a lot with amateurs. A large part of my career is with amateurs. I was captain of almost all the teams I played with. So that's something I like people to know, because I've experienced it all firsthand. So I know very well how things work in football. I know where the differences are. And then recently people got to know me more. So in Serie A, in the top tier, I was only a coach. I never was a player in the top tier. So what mark would you give yourself? Well, I consider myself lucky because I got hold of all that I deserved. I was not lucky. I'm not lucky in the purest meaning of the term. If I play, if I gamble, I won't win. I'm fortunate, you know. If you love someone or you love something, you must dedicate your time to them. You must not give them a gift, some sort of gift. And I have dedicated everything to my work. Is there something you have sacrificed in terms of your private life? Have you given up something in order to focus entirely on football? Well, I've sacrificed everything. I've given up everything. Indeed, if I could go back, perhaps I would consider it a little more, because I need something that is more normal, perhaps. So you would actually reconsider it? Well, yes, because sometimes I neglected some very important things. For example, I caused some problems to my family. I didn't make them suffer, but probably I didn't give them the due attention all the time. So, just one more question, then I'll leave the floor to you, and then we'll see you later. We know you're a disciplinarian. Talking about Spalletti, you once said, "What I cannot stand in my players are things that sometimes I did as well." So what did you do as a player, as a footballer? Well, I was doing everything that youths do now, and I took it to an extreme in a way. So I was always told I went to bed too late, but actually I went to bed late because I couldn't sleep, because I was very nervous about the match the following day. Is there something that you reproach? Something you wouldn't want your players to do, but something that perhaps you did as a footballer when you were younger? Well, I can scold them when their lifestyle is not appropriate for performing in the best possible way in football, which is what they have dedicated their lives to. And this means giving happiness to all the people who are close to you. It's not just a happiness that stems from a victory. It's about the happiness that you can give to all those who have suffered to achieve your same goal. That is true happiness. So that happiness is not what we host inside ourselves. It's what we are able to give to the others. I was lucky enough to win an Italian league title with Napoli, and I had been waiting for it for all my life. I did win other trophies in my career, but that success was very special. And once I won it, I realized that the most important thing was the path I followed, everything I shared with all the people that were close to me. And we were able to give great joy to a passionate city that is in love with football, which is Naples. And Naples is also a beautiful city, by the way. So, victory, winning, and how delicate, how the issue is something we'll go back to later.
Cardinal Gambette requested us to ask the same question in all the panels according to the different sectors. So how can the human activity in our sector contribute to create and build social friendship? In this case, we do not contribute to build social friendship. We are social friendship. Sports, for those who have practiced sports in a general sense, the place for sports. I mean, any swimming pool or football football court or any gym, any place where sports are practiced is a place of sharing, where we find young people and kids. So, in a system of rules, very often children give rules to themselves since they are very, very young. My children, when they started playing, if they played, they set forth rules for themselves. They were invented for sure, but any child does this. If you place children in a system of rules, you are creating social friendship, because at that point in time you are creating a social gathering. Sport is a tool because you build through the well-being of children. They are citizens who will feel better tomorrow. So there is less friction. And where everyone is feeling well, the system as a whole can benefit. And it is also a system of education. Sports help us understand that each of us, each one is essential in other people's lives. Also, when we talk about football, they talk about an assist. What is an assist? When I participate, because I'm supporting one of my teammates in order to score a goal. So I assist another player in order to score a goal. It is a social assistance. So assist is an element of education, because this is what is happening and should happen in the daily life of everyone when we develop active policies for the life of our country. Think of when there is a relay, they pass the baton. They pass the baton in order to achieve a goal. So there are 4 athletes together, female or males, and they are participating in a common path, in a common run, in order to get to a common target. So this is the social friendship. I've been practicing sport throughout my life. I started when I was 4 and I stopped at 32. And I did it in all different ways, as an able body, as a disabled person. So throughout my life, I have learned all of that, and especially respect for other people. I learned to be respectful, and we must recognize in others what we are. The most common gesture in sport is shaking hands at the end of any competition. A natural gesture, a human and fraternal gesture, is shaking hands. What is the other place in our daily lives where people shake hands or give a hug to each other? In sport, this is something that we already experience. So we do not need to think of something different, but people must believe more in the sport system so that our country can grow. Mr. Spalletti, you said something which was quite subtle one. So winning is always difficult. It's a difficult matter. What are the risks connected to a victory? What is the dark side of a victory? The risks involved when you said winning in and of itself makes no sense. It can become a vice. Winning or losing is always an impostor that creates a situation. A liar. You feel that winning a solution, and if you lose, you are a loser. But in both cases, on one hand, it changes your natural condition. And on the other hand, you feel depressed, discouraged. You cannot live in a state of exaltation or depression all the time. We must strike a balance, find a balance. So clearly, if you win, you feel a bit spoiled, and then when you are defeated, you will check what was wrong in order to find remedies. But what becomes essential is that everything you have shared with those people who were close to you before getting to that victory or to that failure or defeat. There are moments that you have spent together. For instance, I spent some moments or some with my players when I was a player or when I was a coach, in both cases. Inside myself, those moments are even more emotional than the final result. I do not call my victory. I call the person with whom I shared those moments. I make a call to the people with whom, after dinner, we spent time to try to organize a team that could compete with a special adversary. Sometimes we had to
senza farne accorgere a nessuno.
Shrink the pitch because we had to find a solution. So those things remained with me, stayed with me, and were much stronger. If you ask me, how is the cup that you held last year in Naples? I can't describe that cup, even though I held many different cups. But if you told me I should become a painter, I can paint all the faces that I saw while I was holding a cup. I could paint all the faces of my players, winning or losing. I mean, this is the issue of football and of young people in general. When I am in a situation like this one, and we talk and people ask me, how can we draw young people closer to sports? The question should be the opposite. What should we stop doing in order to draw young people closer to sports? And so, since you mentioned the team, the Naples football team, certainly you must have made some observations in terms of the conditions that were not adequate in order to stay with them. But from the psychological standpoint, was there any sort of fear, or maybe the fear not to replicate the huge success of a city like Naples? Luciano Spalletti. I worked in a company manufacturing couches and armchairs, and I didn't have any money to buy sneakers, Adidas. I was wearing those sneakers while I was while I was on the bench. I have 3 amazing children. If I will get married, I will get married with this model of sneakers, the World Cup, because I had to wait such a long time in order to buy that pair of shoes. Now, finally, I am at the level. I was able to achieve goals I've been suffering for a long time. And now, a question. But this is linked to the history of an individual, whether there is fear or not. So what is the fear you're referring to? Since this year, you have been living as an important observer of the Naples football team. You thought I did the right things, I could not have done more, or I would have expected something of a higher quality. I would have expected something showing more quality. As a question, It is too easy to answer this question. The answer is no, absolutely, but certainly we must go into detail. We must get inside the workings of the phenomenon and understand many things. I made my decisions because I have reasons behind those decisions. I'm sorry because I love everyone, I forgive everyone, but I do not forget anything at all. So I cannot say why I left. I'm not going to share with you the actual reason why I left. There are some aspects I might mention, but there were things that I have experienced 24 hours a day throughout my life in order to get there. And once I was there, I was not afraid because I've been dreaming of that moment for a very long time. Like being the head coach of the national football team. I was called to coach the national football team. How could I be scared? My question was, you won such an important title, and you were talking about the eyes and the happiness of the people that you were able to watch. So the reasons why you decided not to stay, maybe the conditions you have experienced were unacceptable. In the current football, we talk when we are there and we develop and we discuss our job. We talk about position-related football and relation-based football. And we learn, for instance, from Sacchi, and I like to mention Sacchi because it was an epoch-making change what brought Sacchi into the football world. So we make our assessments, and what happens in a relational football, the relation that we create in a changing room. Everyone, each of us has to make a contribution. Having differences in terms of race, culture, and religion in a changing room, this is something that gives us even more substance and robustness. Because if there are two people who think in the same way, it's not possible to make progress. Rather, listening to many people, sharing, we must find a way to live together. But if a football player just look in front of him, he will not be a strong football player. In order to be strong and smart, champions look around. You can see how they move their heads. So the relations, the aspect of relations within the Naples football team was absolutely amazing, and we won. It was not just my merit, not just because of me. That city has a tremendous passion. You cannot stop them. You cannot curb that passion. You cannot contain that passion. It is overflowing, and you get scared because when they start placing things in the city, and I traveled by motorcycle or by car, and they said, it is too early. And they ran behind me. So it becomes important to find a way for these forces to be balanced. And all those forces were there. We should not just have one champion. If a leader goes ahead and it is too distant, you cannot see what the leader is doing. Clearly, it is important to work and to make efforts. in order to put all these things together.
Mi sono preso la confidenza.
The president was referring to an assist. I mean, an assist is going to make two people happy. The one who will score the goal, certainly, and the person who assisted the player who scored the goal. So this is what really matters.
Campioni e sono tuttora campioni.
Because they are champions. Right now they are losing a few matches. Sometimes you must be lucky and to win, and right now not everything is into place, is working so well. I'd like to add something. Luciano said something that sums up the questions we've asked so far. When he says that on the pitch, the player does not just run and look forward. He must look around, look for other players and look for the situation. So in the pitch of life, it is important to look around and find some teammates in life, some life companions. Everything we're talking about, humanity, fraternity, well, from this standpoint, when I look around, I would like to find someone who can lend me a hand. That's when we can truly focus on solidarity, on assistance, the positive assistance we were talking about. So in a way, sport, just by looking around for a teammate, tells us what we must do in our daily life. When I became disabled, for many years, I used to be an athlete, and I was not a bad athlete, by the way. Let me tell this to myself. I mean, I'm 60, so right now, I no longer have the strength I had when I was 35, when I was 20. Right now, asking for help is something that doesn't scare me anymore. When I was younger, I really was ashamed to ask it, but I can assure you it's the most beautiful thing you can do in life. Ask for help, especially when there is someone who is willing to help. Well, I believe this truly sums up what happens in sports on a daily basis. A teammate is looking for help for any reason, but finding that kind of social coexistence in life, that civil coexistence, where there is an answer to your call for help, well, that's where the secret for a better society is. That's right. I look for teammates because I must pursue that idea of team spirit, teamwork. And in order to pursue it, I must see who I can pass the ball to, the ball that I have just received. I must know who's behind me, who's in front. I must look around and find a teammate on the pitch. And if you're able to stimulate yourself, then you can truly show who you are. A technical, skilled player can truly show his skills. If you're able to get through to others and involve them, then you can truly show what you can achieve, because you can do nothing on your own. You cannot receive the ball from the goalkeeper and then go straight on your own. Then some are given more importance, or perhaps the journalists, give more importance to certain players, perhaps the player that does something that is key. We can see in modern football, a defender tackles a forward, then all the other teammates go to him and high-five him because he did a great thing. So if you're in football, you know there are a number of crucial aspects. It's not just a matter of scoring a goal. Last year, thinking about Napoli's championship, I'm thinking about that corner kick where we lose the ball and they start a counterattack. We had 8 players in the penalty box and they were running all together towards our goalpost, and we were running too, trying to oppose this counterattack. That's when I truly realized that Napoli had become a great team and that it had all the qualities that the Pope calls for in that document, talking about sport. That document he issued 6 years ago, where he talked about the features that should exist in a changing room in order to unite forces, unite strengths, and achieve a goal all together. He mentions all this, he mentions all the differences. That was the very first document drafted by Pope which mentions sport, which is referred to sport. Going back to what President Pancalli was saying about the beauty of asking for help. Do your players ask you for help? Do they come to you for reasons other than football related? It can happen with some players. I mean, many of these players, in a way, were my children, my sons, the ones that I coached. So I realize that if something isn't going well, if something is wrong, perhaps I can give a word of advice. That can be crucial when there is great trust. This can happen. I didn't get any direct requests for advice, but when you live together, when you're together, you realize that sometimes you must step in somehow. So right now, the Italian Football Federation has been somewhat criticized for what happened during the training sessions at the training center. But now, so they were sent away because they did something wrong. But we're ready to welcome them back in the future. In an interview with Corriere della Sera, you said that our national team can compete with England, Germany, France, but we need to work on it. So what are the main assets of the team and what are the weaknesses, the aspects you should be working on most? Well, the days we will be spending together at the facility, at the training facility, in June, 10, 15 days before starting the European Championship. That will be a crucial moment. We have the opportunity of making history once again, but we must look at what we have already done. Our worst enemy is arrogance. When you think you're the best, when you're better than everyone else, well, that will just turn against you. You need to be brave, you need self-esteem, you need to be daring, sure, but you reach a certain stage where you realize perhaps you're overstepping your bounds, so you know you have to step back. So you must be a little careful, look at reactions. You must avoid focusing on the individual, but you must focus always on yourself as a team. We need to do better than what we have done so far. But we have a good starting point, I'd say. So in those 10, 15 days, we'll see how we'll be able to work together, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because we have the opportunity to do better. I'm sure we can do better. Over to you now. I'll be back with another couple of questions, actually. Well, what Spalletti said embodies the reason why we're here. And it can help us understand why and how sport can build peace, how it can be one of the 12 bricks. Because Mr. Spalletti said that on the pitch you cannot make it on your own. And peace cannot be built alone. Peace needs to be shared. If on the pitch you cannot win on your own, well, that same metaphor is suitable to understand how we can follow the path to fraternity. And then you said that football is social in a way because everyone is fundamental for everyone else on the pitch. But right now, is sport being experienced from this social standpoint, or is it being experienced from a standpoint that is not as good as the one you described? And I believe the latter is the case. In all phenomena of daily life, in all aspects of society, there's always something that happens and something that describes, narrates what happened. And the narration isn't always exact, isn't always accurate. The world of sport is not isolated from the problems of civil society. It doesn't ignore all that happens around us. And what happens around us risks narrating what happens inside us, perhaps manipulating the vision of a world. And our world, which is very broad and complex, and when we talk about football with a great coach such as Spalletti. So when I think about football, I cannot just look at the tip of the iceberg, because the narration would be wrong. It would be the one we read in the papers and listen on the radios. It would be good to go to the suburbs and look at and watch children play football and see how children enjoy themselves. They run after the ball, and that brings them joy. And that's what football is about. So the sports system, just as all the systems that are part of our daily life, is a complex system. Surely it's a system that can help. Since you were mentioning peace, it can help favor dialogue, because sport is indeed an instrument. Even today, Macron calls for an Olympic truce. But I wouldn't want it to be just an Olympic truce. It already happened in Beijing. Then the Olympics are over and the truce ends. No. But this, what he did, somehow assigns to sport an important role. Think about the past, that table tennis game that allowed the situation to ease a bit during the Cold War. That was a game, that was a sport. And in the world of sport, we have that dimension that can be strongly perceived, which is the element of fraternity, because we play on a level field. There are no structures. We don't have the structures that can be found in the world of economics, of other sectors. The world of sport is very transparent. It's very straightforward. We're all wearing the same jersey, the same tracksuit, the same shorts. It's a world where democracy truly exists. And the thing that really makes me angry is that what we should actually invest to enhance the potential of sport, we should invest in schools. That's the driving engine. But we don't. A lot of parents don't have their children do sports because they can't afford it. They cannot go to football, do swimming, they cannot go to the gym. That's wrong. That's why we need politics to step in, because we can talk about the world of sports, which is perfect, but if it's not supported, it just doesn't work. And if there are economic issues, economic barriers to the right of enjoying sport, if those barriers always exist, we'll do nothing. We'll be doing nothing to help youths. We've always mentioned the right to sport, how it should be included in the Constitution. But this has not happened. The values of sport have just been expressed under the 6th paragraph of Article 33. When the Constituent Fathers wanted to ascribe a right, they explicitly stated that the Republic ensures the right to education, to work. But there is no such wording for sport, so that right still has not been acknowledged. And until we won't be helping schools, we won't be doing anything tangible.
So, getting back to your question, I think that sport has its problems too. Certainly, if we focus on a serious analysis, we may realize that we have our problems because we live in this world. But the theme here is to elevate our discussion, raise the level of discussion. Sports policies are as important as any other policy. When we talk about sports, we shouldn't just talk about results or medals. I like talking about also that young girl that in a campus she was able to swim, and their parents or the mother was crying because, and I mean verbatim, she said, "It is the first time my daughter is doing something that I cannot do." So if we can give a value to what sports produce, while we're talking across our country, they are producing something with the ball. One of the most important pedagogists to explain what happiness is to his students, he said, try to give a ball to children and you will see happiness in their eyes, and that is happiness. I do not want to be rhetorical, but if people really believe in a sport that has a beginning and an end, it's a big iceberg, and we just see the most visible representation, but it is made of many men and women, many people, parents that after work they go to a gym, they clean the gym so that their children can practice sports there. That is civil society, but we are so distant from that. Civil society, women and men of this country, vis-à-vis those who must provide answers. It is so difficult to figure out what has been really done. And talking in football terms, what is the next goal we need to score? I cannot remember your question because I've been speaking so much. I mean, what you were discussing is the actual topic. Great job. So the problem is how much importance we attach to a victory or a defeat. When fathers take their children to play tennis or football at 4 or 5 years of age, and they hope that the next day these children will become champions. I mean, this is part of their pride. I mean, the racket or the ball are bigger of the child who is playing tennis or football. And the parents expect from those children to become champions. But children, once they have on their shoulders these huge responsibilities, very often they refuse sports. They start practicing sports since they are at school, and they really run and they compete with the other children to see who gets there first. I mean, those are natural sports. But once they start, they lose the effect of the actual play. They do not they do not realize that they can win from the very beginning, or rather they can enjoy practicing sports, because they feel that they either are champions or they are losers. So those children start feeling this fear. There are children who maybe do not become champions from the very beginning, but they can have a potential. But we lose them in this evolution. So it's a bad habit. This pressure on these children is a bad habit. And they do not know how to respond. If we look at two different teams of two different categories, when they are on the pitch, they have the same happiness. They share the same happiness. Certainly, the audience will be different, but sports produce happiness also in situations where not necessarily you have to win a trophy. And many children or young people leave their sports because they feel this pressure. They must win, otherwise they feel they are nothing and they count nothing. And I keep telling the young people I meet, and they ask me, are we going to win the European Championship? So my answer is, first of all, we must compete. Will you be with me in this experience of the European title? Will you get involved? Will you make your contribution? So we can feel stronger if we join forces. But the journey is absolutely essential. And we need to approach this journey having the intention that, feeling that, however it goes, tomorrow I will be better because I will feel enriched thanks to that experience. And the same must be experienced in other sports. The value of sport is joy and happiness that can be experienced at any level. So at 65, we can play with the children and we feel as children. I have a son who is 31 and I have a daughter who is 13, and we had to do things that for our age, in those situations we were not so competitive, but it was really nice to go back and play with them. At 55, under a table, I was playing with my daughter. This is the essence of sport. We must play, whatever the expectations are. That is not the real spirit of sports. It can happen that people fight because there is something wrong in the gesture of players on the pitch. But if this brings about a war on the stands, young people can really feel afraid. Adults can interfere with their activity. You have achieved so many victories, but what is the defeat that was the most useful for you? A defeat that helped you, that taught you to be able to lose. I should explore, I should go deeper in something that make me suffer. I lost a lot. I suffered many defeats. It also happened that I was able to bring with me things that were very important. With the Milan team, we lost the champions last year, and I was very sad for that defeat. So this is something recent. My question referred to something else. I mean, it's something which happened recently, so it's a fresh defeat, and this is why I remember it. But there are many I might refer to. But you won more. What was the best of the many experiences that you had? So I'm not going to ask you this question. If you had to give us an adjective for the Roma football team, the Zenit football team, St. Petersburg, and Naples. So for these 4 experiences, what was your best experience? An adjective for each of them. I should look at synonyms and antonyms. These are experiences that I had with these huge cities, very big audiences, this passion for football, this willingness to share many things, beautiful cities. So I should find 4 adjectives of very high level, beautiful adjectives for the 4 of them. So I will tell you something just to play a game. I was bothered when you refer to something that I'm afraid of. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings, but I have had so many experiences, and I've gone through all the experiences in the football sector. So, and now I'm at the top. You didn't hurt my feelings, because my job is to ask questions, and you can answer the way you like. It was a psychological question. Please forgive me. Maybe I hurt your feelings. Maybe I touched a delicate spot. Going back, and if you had the chance to choose, would you like to have relate to Vandanara or to the Totti supporters? Those 2 situations actually made me feel stronger, because I was able to fight with so many people. So when I went back home, and I said this many times, I loved very much my brother, who unfortunately passed away some time ago. I can tell that my father was the strongest one. Then there was my brother, and I can say maybe I'm the least strong. But he told me, Luciano, an amazing job. I mean, in the papers I read, go home. My child, while he was at school, he heard so many bad things about me, and my brother told me, a perfect job. I can understand 80-20, 70-30, but if you have 100% of people against you, it means that you are doing a perfect job. So when everyone is against you, you gain a knowledge of your character, of your temperament, because you are under overwhelming pressure. and this shows who you really are. I would have never expected in those situations to react like that. They were all against me. From the people I met in the street, to those who wrote to me, and beautiful statements. If I read them now, then I went back home and I thought about stopping or giving up. But the next day, once I was back to my job and I had to fulfill my role in that context, I had no doubts. So, as our president mentioned before, Luca, anything I was told, I didn't care a lot at all. I had to do the right thing and the right job for the goals, the purposes that all the football teams pursue. Victories belong to everyone.
I cannot accept certain words by a footballer that has already won a lot. Well, I'll wait for you to come to my TV show. And I'll leave the floor to you for wrapping up. So we've heard some very interesting thoughts. President Pancalli said something beautiful. Probably, I speak for myself, we do the opposite. We don't think about what we have. We think about what we don't have. And a society that thinks of an individual is more likely to become a brother if it thinks about what they have rather than what they don't have. And this is a great message we can give from this meeting today. And Mr. Spalletti was talking about the joy of football. It is a joy that comes regardless of victory or defeat. I would ask Spalletti if we as Catholics, practicing Catholics, I've always been at the local parish church and the local pitch. So, Mr. Spalletti, there's a bit of a crisis in these parish oratorium football pitch. There are not so many children that play football there. Has this led to the crisis of Italian football? Or perhaps this also go for football schools? There's more football played in football schools rather than in oratoriums and parish churches. So perhaps football is not being played so much. It's not being enjoyed so much. Well, if you no longer have that kind of experience, then some talents may not emerge. That's true. There is a lot of technology now that drives children away from real football. We must tell our youths that they should have an experience abroad, because there are a lot of players that come to Italy to play football, but very few go abroad to play second-tier football. But regardless of the level, you can experience something important, gain experience, and then come back to Italy. In Italy, players prefer staying here, sitting on the bench in the youth teams of Serie A, rather than playing in the first tier of another country, such as Kosovo, where they might think that football is at a lower level. But if you go there, you can truly experience football, what it means to prepare for a match, to talk with a teammate who's from another country. So I must be ready to learn something new. We're not ready to do this. We prefer to go and have a drink here, a comfortable, handy solution. Perhaps you're never playing. You're never being sent on the pitch. So again, it's all a matter of handy solutions. So the young footballers that come to Italy show they are ready to sacrifice themselves. They're ready to give up and make greater efforts. And this perhaps affects the emergence of our football talent. I thank Mr. Pancalli and Mr. Spalletti. The event is about 12 bricks. Mentions 12 bricks needed to draft the final document. So I would like President Pancalli and Coach Spalletti, whom we thank for all their comments, some of which extremely deep. Tonight, Mr. Spalletti, I will tell my children about the difference between being fortunate and being lucky. I thought that was a good distinction you made. So if you could all quickly write down just a small paragraph for the final document, a paragraph that comes from the world of sport. Taking cue from the question, how can sport contribute? We are different ethnicities, we have different religions, but we're all brothers and we want to live in peace. How can football contribute? So as I was saying at first, we must carry on doing what we do, knowing that the real revolution, from my point of view, given my experience, my life experience that is different compared to yours, the most extraordinary thing in this world is to be normal. Not meaning different from others, but acquiring that normality in approaching issues, in addressing problems. I'm not sure if I can explain it properly. I tell my children, they're grown-ups, when they're beginning to have some problems, I tell them the most simple thing to do is to address the problem normally. And you must never be afraid to ask for help. Because if you ask for help, it doesn't mean you're weak. We live in a society that wants us all to be performing, beautiful, rich, fast, but that's not the case. It cannot be so, because the world tells us reality is different. It cannot work this way. We're all beautiful, we're all performing, we're all fast and efficient and so on, all on the same level. Well, that cannot work. That doesn't exist. Everyone must know they have limits. I've learned this firsthand. And I realized how lucky I was before I lost the use of my leg. The good Lord has given me the opportunity to realize how lucky I was. You perform actions on a daily basis and you not give them the proper value. For 6 months, I couldn't even use my arms. I had to be totally taken care of. Today, that's 40 years have passed since my accident. Every day, I drink a glass of water on my own. And that is what richness is about. So I know, well, you know what you lose when you realize you cannot have it anymore. So we must always think about our being normal. Those who stand before us are brothers, not enemies, not competitors, not rivals. This is what we must realize. They are not people that compete against us. And as the Holy Father says, the only way to truly understand the path towards fraternity and peace is in the grammar of humanity. That is social justice. And this calls for normalization. We should all lower our expectations when it comes to performance. Well, does that sound like rhetorics? Perhaps. Was that a bit of a Catholic rhetorics? But I have learned from my life experience to feel rich. A lot of my friends have not been so fortunate. What Luciano just said, the football metaphor, the assist makes two people happy. So donating does not just make happy the recipient of the gift. It gives joy to who gives the gift. Because if you feel useful, it can truly be helpful. If I realize I've been useful, well, I'll feel better. And it's not a matter of medals, but if a parent tells me that thanks to sport, I realize my life is not over, well, that's greatly rewarding. We tend to look for a narration that highlights everything that is wrong and anything that can prove our failure in terms of performance. But that is wrong. Life consists of a vast array of colors and aspects and elements. All must have equal opportunities in accessing the paths to our rights. And then, I'm not sure if this is the best possible recipe to obtain our goals. I just know that in the morning, when you wake up and look at yourself in the mirrors, you must think that you've done something good for yourself. I deal with sports. I've been doing it for a lifetime, not just because it's a world where there is great, extraordinary humanity. Anyone who moves closer, who is drawn close to the world of Paralympic sport, is totally captivated by it. But that goes for all sports, the entire world of sports. We must simply be able to express it. But there are no single ingredients. We need just the best possible approach. The approach of a good father. A father that puts all his efforts, does all he can for his children. It's not a matter of having a lot of money in your bank account. It's a matter of putting great effort in all you do for the people you love. What can we write in this final document? Any suggestion, Mr. Spalletti? So, what can we include in the final document? We can say that we have done what we were supposed to, and this can give us more opportunities in the future in assessing this world and all that can unite us and make us live with greater calmness, so that we can live in justice and peace. Stop wars. We want peace. So I'll thank President Pancali and Mr. Spalletti. Then again, sport, like music, inclusiveness and equal opportunities is extremely positive thing. So thank you for fostering sport from a cultural standpoint, and thank you, Mr. Spalletti, for giving us joy through football, and thank you for moderating this event. And I also thank everyone in attendance.